Okay. Morning, everyone. Welcome back to another session of our CEJA reporting system office hours. Today, we will be going over reports in the system, and there's a few things I wanted to just note that we are working on. Um, in the current sprint. One of them, well, we'll get to the narrative report, but we're going to be adding an export um, to that report and currently working on a new transition outcome, the joint entrepreneurial program on the program completion follow-up tab. And then the other thing, it's really more for kind of me and the regional administrators. But I know with, workflows and, sometimes a new group or subgroup is set up. But essentially what we're working on is a tool for me to, kind of manually override and just automatically update who the navigator or provider is. Um, and just kind of a quicker way to get those data corrections into the system. That way we don't have to wait for a programmer who's working on all sorts of other things in the system. So um excited for that, so we can kind of stay on top of those data fixes and corrections as they come in. Let's see, I think those are the only things I wanted to note as far as forthcoming updates. So before we get into reports, I wanted to go ahead and open it up to see if anyone had any questions before we got started here. Oops. I was going to say, if not, we will have an opportunity later in the call before we end for Q&A. And it's a smaller crew today on the call. We got some events going on, but I don't believe any of our regional administrators are joining, so it's just going to be me today. But we'll go ahead and get started on reports. So let's see, I'm logged into CEJA as a Climate Works grantee. And the first report that we can take a look at is the CEJA dashboard report. Let me open this up and click filter so we can get our table loaded here. And let's see. So when the table loads, we have different sections for the different parts of where customers are in the CEJA system. This first one, we have outreach, and we won't go through every field because we'll run out of time for all of our reports in every row that we see, but we can get a glance where our customers are as far as outreach, intake, referrals, services, credentials, completion information, transition outcomes, and program follow-up. And when we see these rows here, typically red means take action, red is kind of, yellow is take action, and red is kind of really take action, because then sometimes it's we're past follow-up, it's been more than a certain amount of days. And then at the end we have our columns here for the number of customers who are meeting this criteria. And a lot of these will see info bubbles on what specifically this is referring to. So for example, in this one, customers with an inquiry status, these are just our customers who've not completed pre-screening and who've not been updated as do not contact. So we would open this list up here and see our 48 customers who are inquiries. And then green, we're good, we're all set there. I will note, I'm not really sure. In other programs, we've had issues with this percentage column. I'm not sure if this is really working. I know at least in JTED, we've just removed this column. We may do the same for CEJA, so I wouldn't really pay too much attention to this column on the end here for percentages. Let's see. So another example would be, pre-screening has not been completed within 30 days. And we can see, what are the next steps. On some of these, we have it, kind of spelled out. So here's, complete pre-screening or indicate, do not contact if they're, not interested in the program. And so we'll see, kind of where they are on, the statuses for these other ones here. And then for intake, it's really, for the most part, we do have some that, are on a wait list. That's the status that's been updated. But then for the most part, it's really, are they eligible? And then has the application been completed? For the application, career assessments and service needs assessments, here's who's completed it, here's who hasn't, here are those who have not completed it within 10 days of the application being submitted. So when we look at our 58 here, if we open up, let's see, this application's not submitted. So if we open up this one here, and we go to intake, this might be another UAT bug. But we would see on intake in that application section a button for, try this one. Or I have to take a look at that. So that was not complete within 10 days application. So I know in the past we've demoed things in UAT and they're not working for some reason, but then we look at our other environments and they are. So hopefully it's just being finicky here. But so you can get a glance of where your customers are in the intake process, and what needs to be completed. And then same for referrals. If we send one, we haven't received a response, or we need to send one based on how we answered our service needs assessment. We just haven't sent one yet. And then these red ones are, we've sent it, but it's been more than 10 days since we've heard from the provider we sent it to. Or let's say referral was sent, service provider responded, but customer has not responded to the service provider. I will need to take a closer look at that. I don't know if that's really a thing in CEJA. And then referrals that have been sent and received and accepted or closed. And then services, customers who have been identified, or customers who have one or more services in the service needs assessment that still need to be addressed. So when we look at our list of customers here, if we were to open up their page, we could see, it's referring to this section right here, where on the service needs assessment, we said we were going to provide some in-house support for gas cards, but we never entered the cost. And so once we enter it, it would be green. And then similarly, who have an estimated cost. So if we entered the cost, we got the number here, listed, but, and let me just open this one up here. So we got 3 customers with an estimated cost. This is referring to, so yeah, in this might not be a good example since there's so many costs. But this is yellow because even though we have all of the costs entered, we, on at least one of those, there is when entering the cost, there's a question, is this a cost estimate, yes or no? And if we select yes, then, the system's really just flagging, you identified this cost as, being an estimate, go back and, update it so so you have that exact amount, and then you can, switch it over. So it would look like this if, let's say, transportation was the one that we had cost estimate, and if we were to select no and then, update the cost if we needed to and saved it, then this would turn to green. But like I said, there's so many costs here, and rather than try and find a needle in the haystack, we'll just move on. And then the career plan services, this is mostly looking at whether, the presence of a service, if they don't have training or career services, which might be kind of moot, to be honest, with the way it's set up with how, we always have at least one training service populating when customers are added. But in this one, if they're, customers have at least one service where the start and completion status does not match the deadlines set with the end dates. What that is looking at is when we look at a customer's overview page, and we can see, like in this case here, career planning case management, we updated it to start and open, so the customer's enrolled, and we said we would complete it by September 30th, 2024. Well, we're way past that. And so the system's flagging that as, hey, you said this was going to be completed by this date. And so then we just need to go into the career plan and update the service to, close it out, or, if we needed to extend the end date into the future, and then that would, you get rid of the red flag here. Let's see. And then credentials, pretty straightforward. Those who don't have a credential, here's those that do. Same for completion. Here's those who are in progress, who's completed, who's exited, and follow-up is required, not required, the few who withdrew. And then our transition outcomes, just listing our different outcomes and, any statuses or sub-statuses, clean energy, not clean energy jobs, and so forth. And then program follow-up, if they're exit withdrawn, and then past due for follow-up. And this is when, after they've been marked as exited, then we have these different intervals in which to follow up. And on the program completion page, we can just go to that real quick here. That's just going to be referring to our follow-up section down here, where we can see, we've left a case note during these different intervals. And when we do, we get a green check mark. Red is just, we haven't reached that yet, or it hasn't happened. And in order to follow up, we'll just click this and, enter a case note, which we've, seen before in our past calls there. And then that would be good for that row. Okay, so that's the dashboard. I guess the only other thing I would note is, as we're making it's kind of a different view. Click on. So, on the individual level on a customer's page, we can see, all our different flags here. Maybe not so much for this customer, but this progress page, this is really kind of this dashboard, bird's eye view of all of your customers and their progress pages. And we do have an overnight sync that should, update this. I know I just clicked this for 11/16, but it happens later in the evening. And so, as you're making changes, you can come back in here and refresh the status to see if, the flags changed. And if you made a bunch of updates, but you didn't want to have to, go through and individually click refresh status, you can click this refresh data button and you get a prompt. This may take a few minutes. But when you click that, that's essentially refreshing the pages, for all the customers that you have access to. Okay, so that's the dashboard. And let's go to our work plan and reports. So we got our project work plan here, and maybe we'll open up this one. Actually, let me submit one. So if we haven't submitted a project work plan, what we can do is select the calendar year in our organization and click Submit Project Plan. And so when we do that, we'll enter in the project narrative, the grant number. This is optional. This would pull in from the grantee details page. Let's see, this would be, no, CEJA, sign on, okay. So this is under this provider info icon, grantee details tab, and the associated grants, the number that we've entered in here is what's going to appear over here. But again, this is optional. I don't believe there's any expectation from the RAs on getting that added in there. And then we have drop downs for grantee project manager, reporting staff, fiscal staff, and other. And these selections can be made, and the names you'll see here, these are just going to be those who have access to the CEJA along with you. So if you don't see their name in here, then they don't have access to the system. And this is where the project overview, you can enter some text here. Here. Oops. So that's the project narrative section, and then in activities and outcomes, we can enter in our projected plan numbers for these different rows here: outreach events, inquiry contacts, partners, applicants enrolled, completers, EJC and or R3, formerly incarcerated, foster care, transition outcome expectations, and so forth. So we can enter in our numbers there. And for training programs, these are pulling through the training program page. So, oops. Okay, good. It did keep all that. So on the provider info tab in training programs, where we entered our programs, what we've entered over here is what's going to be pulling through over to this training program section. And then cohorts, these are pulling in from another section that we'll get to. I think we need to, maybe if there's time, I can take a closer look on some cohort updates, because I know we were going to do some updates to cohorts. I don't know if we have anything.
They're not scheduled yet.
Not scheduled yet. Okay. Thanks,
Yep.
Natasha. Oh, oops, gotta enter this in here. And I think we'll be good to submit now. All right, so we'll click save, we'll click OK, and then we'll see that this has been submitted. It's not yet approved. And once it is approved by a regional administrator, then this would change to approved. So let me exit this. This would just take us back to our page here, and we can see the one that we've submitted and its status here. And if we click this reports tab, okay. Cohort report, I might hold off on going over that, but cost report, if we open this up here, this is a report that will allow us to look at our grantees, or if we have sub-grantees, costs that we've entered for services. I mean, for the most part, they're probably going to be just wraparound support services. But when we click filter, we can see, here's our provider, here's the customer, the wraparound service, and then that cost information that we entered. So we have, the payment method, type of cost, the dollar amount, the frequency. And this would be a good tool to see if you have, any in your list here that are, cost estimates. So if you saw that in the dashboard, we had that example earlier where there was a customer who had, I don't know, 30 costs entered, and at least one of those was an estimate. What you'd be able to do is come into this report and filter through, and you could see, which one it was specifically. So if it was, Jerry's here, then if we open up this pencil icon in a new tab, we can see that the first month rent was the one that we entered as a cost estimate. So then when we come in here and click edit, we can see that yes is selected. So that can save you time from having to, open up, especially if you got a lot of costs on this tab here. Let's see. And then, yeah, you can just see the other information, dates, who entered it, when it was updated, and if we need to remove or edit it, we can do so here. And we can also run an export for this if we needed that in Excel. All right, next one, the customer service report. The filter here. Let's see. So CEJA, grantee, community, partnership. So if I filter this, this will pull back a table that will show services. And with this table, there's at least one customer who has, any service that we see here. If you don't see a service in here, then that means none of your customers have that service. But once at least one does, then there would be a new row. But in this view, we can see, our services, and then where our customers are status-wise. So, is it plan not started, started, complete, unsuccessful, complete, evaluated, not required. So we can see in these columns here, how many customers with, a specific service have that status. And then these last two columns will show, here are the customers who have that service, and here's those that don't. And if we were looking at, let's see, maybe we needed to add, custom training to, a few of our, customers here. They need that service. So if we click this 109, this will open up a new tab where we can see our list of, customers who don't have that service. And let's say, the first three all needed it. So we can update their status. We can update the start date. And then the end date and the planned due date. I think those can pretty much be the same. So let's just go ahead and enter those in. So we'll get our dates entered in, and then we'll get our weekly hours. And so when we have that information entered here, what we can do is click save. We'll see 3 services updated successfully. Those 3 customers are no longer in this list. And then when we come back to the previous table, so we had custom training. And if we click filter again and go back to custom training, we can see this is now down to 106. And in this row, for number of customers who have that service, we have 4. And we can see those 3 that we added, they're pulling through over here. So that's a quick way to kind of update the dates, statuses, weekly hours, and adding services to, customers, kind of at once if there's, a batch that need it, rather than having to, manually go into each customer profile, navigating to their, career plan. But then once the service has been added, we also have this column here that we can open up in a new tab or click. and it will take us directly to that service where we could, since it's a training service, we could then, enter in that assessment score to mark it as complete. All right, our next report is the demographics report. We'll take a look at the Climate Works one. So we'll filter to community partnership, our time frame. We'll select all, and then for section, we'll just select all performance measures and click search. And this will pull up a table. We can see in this first one here, here's our table for demographics as it relates to enrollment. So we can see we've got 122 applicants, 33 of those applicants have or are enrolled. And then we can see, in each column for applicants and enrolled, the breakdown of what we've entered during intake. So we can see race, gender, age, veteran status, and equity eligible community status. And then that was our enrollment one. So then for training completion, we'll see here's a number of individuals who've completed training. See 16, then again, that breakdown. And then the last one is for apprenticeship placement. So number of graduates placed in construction and building trades apprenticeship. Looks like for this grantee, not too many. But we can see that breakdown once again. And you can also run an export of this as well. And yeah, you can select all apprenticeship training. You can select, one of these three or all of them. Time frame. You can also filter by calendar and year. So you can then, select over here or custom start and end dates. Okay, so after our demographics report, we have the narrative report. And this is the one where I mentioned that we're going to have an export feature here soon. But we'll filter to our organization, and we can see our past narrative reports. So let's see what our most recent one is. Well, actually, let's just add one. So we'll add a report. It's for 2026. And we'll select the first quarter in January. And so then in this report, we have 6 different sections: summary of grant progress, activities, barriers and technical assistance needs, accomplishments and success stories, expected accomplishments for the next month and quarter, and any additional information. So over text. So we'll add our text into each section here. And then when we have that entered, we can click save. See that it's saved. Then we'll go to 2026, and we can see that we've added this here. And if we click view, we can, this window opens up. We can't edit this because this is specifically for the first quarter of the year. And we can see what we entered for January by clicking the, show January, so we can see what we entered there. But then now we can enter the text for February. Placeholder. So once we do that and save, we come back to our report. We can then see what we entered for January and then February as well. And then we can enter, March, of course, March. Placeholder. And when we view this again, we'll see, those text boxes are gone, but we can see what we entered, for each of these sections and months for the quarter. So that's how that works for each of those. And then, of course, for quarter 2, we would then just 2026, Q2, April, and then fill it in. Success stories admin. This is really just linking to how to submit a success story through workNet. This is our success story guide. You can see we got presentation, recorded videos down below this section here, tips and kind of one pagers for different audiences or different success stories. There's participants, employers, and service providers we have. This is really, if you're submitting on behalf of a customer. And if you click this, if you're not already logged in, it'll have you log in, but then you can submit for a customer or employer. Community story is apprenticeship, Illinois, I think specific to that program. So I would say not to select that for CEJA or FEJA. But when we click customer story, you can then search for your customer by entering their workNet username or their name. And then when you click search, there'll be a table here of possible matches. Since you don't have a test environment for success stories, this is production, so I won't actually search for anyone because it will show name, date of birth, and email address. But it's only going to show customers that you have access to. And since I'm logged in, I can see a lot more. But what the form would look like, let's do this as a workaround. If I change this to participants, so the form would look like this if we were to find and select the customer we were looking for. We have the participant info section that's going to show their name. You can enter the address info. The story type here, the program type, we can select, which program and fill in the program information here. The current pathway or industry that kind of best aligns with the customer, and then any credentials earned. We can also enter a title for the success story, and then here is where we would include the narrative portion. We are limited to 5,000 characters. And then we can also upload a photo that can be of the customer, but if you don't have one or they would prefer not to have their photo, in the past, other programs have just used their organization's logo for the image here. And then this is just the terms of use agreement. And once this is checked for accept and save, it'll get submitted, and we have someone on our staff who reviews this on a weekly basis to review and approve them so that they then become public. So that is success stories. And then let's see what else. Work plan, we did go over that, but we also have the plan versus actual. So if we click this tab here, this is available for navigators, grantees, whether your workforce hubs, climate works, and there are different. Each program kind of has its own. There are different fields and rows, but in the case of climate works, we'll select our grantee, and for time frame we have to date. We can also search by calendar year and quarter or custom start and end dates, but we'll click filter. And it will pull back our table here. And so for climate works, we have outreach and partnerships. We can see how many outreach events, inquiry contacts, how many partners. And we have, kind of what the item is in this first column, how many of the, of those items were completed or added in the previous quarter. Number planned, this is going to be pulling from our plan versus actual, or no, sorry. This is going to be pulling from our work plan that we submitted, and then the actual number. And so then we can see, our hyperlinked, we saw this in some of our other reports, that if we click this, This next section here, service delivery, we have here's how many applied, here's how many enrolled, here's how many completed. And if we click the hyperlink number, then it's going to show that. So we had 16 who had completed, and we can see 16 here. We also have some exits as well. And let's see, for Climate Works, we also have characteristics, resident of EJC and or R3, persons formerly incarcerated or foster care members or graduates, and then our transition outcomes for those who have registered apprenticeship selected as the transition outcome. Here's how many of those who have that outcome who are applied, waitlisted, those who've been placed. And then let's see, what else do we have? If we have unavailable, I believe that just means it hasn't been set up yet. Yes, and then job placements in construction or building trades, there are clean energy employments. And a couple more. Advanced training placements in clean energy, and then for job placements outside of construction, building trade, clean energy placement. And we do have, in this section here, we can show more information. So we had, 3 registered apprenticeship applicants who have applied, and then we can see, those 3 program names here. Oops. And then the last one here, if there were employments or job placements outside of construction, building trades, clean energy, we can see what those were, and the list of customers as well. And again, we have an export here, and trying to think if there's any other report. I don't believe so. Yeah, okay. So I know that was a lot of reports and a lot of time, and we went through them pretty quickly, but just wanted to make sure that we could, find where they are, and, kind of get a sense of what they are. But if anyone has any questions about reports or anything else in CEJA, you can enter that in the chat or come off of mute and ask away. Any questions at all? All right, well, if not, we can end early. I will get the recording posted to our partner guide page here. And if anything comes up, you can send us an email or submit a help request, and we'll go from there. All right, thanks everyone. Have a great rest of your day.
Bye, y'all.